Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And on our panel tonight, we have the Conservative Work and Pensions Secretary, Damian Green, Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, the former SNP leader and First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, the Daily Mail's political editor-at-large, Isabel Oakeshott, and the editor of The Independent, which stopped printing to go online only this year, Amol Raja. If the music stops, I can speak. I should just say you can join the debate on Facebook, on Twitter, or you can text us, as always, 83981, and make your own trenchant comments on what you hear said round this table and by this audience. Our first question is from Eric Hambro, please. Mr. Hambro.
Did the British public give Theresa May a blank cheque to force through whichever Brexit she likes?
Alex Salmond.
No, I don't think that would or should be the case. There's going to be a majority in the House of Commons to invoke Article 50, the Article of Withdrawal from the European Union. But I think there's going to be a vote, and I suspect a very close vote, be forced in the House of Commons as to what kind of Brexit that the Prime Minister now has in mind. I mean, she told us for some weeks that Brexit means Brexit, but never told us what Brexit meant. And you could have a variety of withdrawals from the European Union. You could be like Norway in the single market, but out with the customs union, but not a member of the European Union. Or you could be like Turkey, which is actually not a member of the European Union, not in the single market, but within a customs union.
And which of these has she been offered by the Brexit vote, or is she just to lick her finger and hold it up to the air?
I think she has to tell us, and she has to get the three Brexiteers to agree with each other, and then when they've agreed with each other, they can come to the House of Commons and say, this is the type of a Brexit that we want to see, and we'll find out if it's a hard Brexit, a soft Brexit, or a dog's breakfast.
Damian Green.
I think when
Donald Tusk said today the only alternative to hard Brexit is no Brexit.
that wins the prize for the earliest interruption, even on questions.
Yes. Just setting the scene for you.
Thank you. When people voted on June 23rd, they were clearly voting for some form of more control. So the plan the government has got is that we should certainly take control of our borders, that we should have our laws made by our own parliament, rather than have to go through the European Court of Justice, but also, crucially, that we need the best deal for businesses, both in goods and services, that trade in Europe. Now, that's a clear plan. What the details will obviously have to be negotiated with the 27 other European countries, and no sensible person has ever gone into a negotiation saying every last detail is going to be put on the table at the start. So I think the idea to have all the details out there would actually be disadvantageous to this country. And if there are people who regret the result and want to use parliamentary procedures or court procedures to obstruct it, I can only say that I was on the board of the In campaign. Nobody campaigned harder than I did to keep us in. But above all, I'm a Democrat. The British people voted to get out, and I think we should respect that referendum result.
Saying that that Parliament shouldn't respect the democratic result. Of course not. But don't you think that there should at least be, I'm not saying reveal your entire hand before a negotiation, but at least come to Parliament, who are the people's representatives, and be held accountable. I think it's in the government's interest and the whole country to be held accountable rather than getting some kind of blank cheque.
Briefly?
Well, briefly, this week in Parliament alone, we've had about 7.5 hours of debate on this. We had a 2-hour statement from David Davis. We had a Labour Opposition Day debate yesterday, 5.5 hours. And I suspect that will be repeated week after week. Parliament will have a huge say in this negotiation. The government's just set up a new cross-party select committee to investigate this, chaired by a Labour MP with representatives of all countries in the United Kingdom on it. So Parliament will obviously have a huge say in this.
There are a lot of hands up. The woman there, and then I'll come to Emily Thornberry. You.
Whatever kind of Brexit Theresa May is going to choose, what we need really is an end to this uncertainty that's destabilising the economy at the moment, fluctuating the pound and affecting businesses, big and small. We've seen from Unilever right down to the very smallest businesses, such as what I run, a small architecture firm, that my clients are nervous. They're not wanting to put on the line all of their savings when they don't know what will happen.
Are you saying she should have made up her mind what kind of solution she's going to go for?
I think
so would that be enough? She's got to negotiate with the rest of the EU, hasn't she?
There's only a few opportunities that we have to put forward this plan, and there's this chance with Labour's vote this week to spell it out before she enters into the realm of discussing with the EU.
Emily Thornberry.
Does Theresa May have a blank cheque? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The fact of the matter is that, of course, we get our instructions from the British public, and the British public have said that they want us to leave the European Union. But one thing that wasn't clear from that referendum and the so-called debate around it was what our continuing relationship with Europe was going to be. Because we're not going to go sailing off into the North Sea and have nothing to do with our European neighbours, with whom we export 45% of our goods and services at the moment. So we need to have a continuing relationship. It was not clear during the referendum. They've had many months since then. Theresa May stood not even on a platform. She didn't even have to have a manifesto, not even have to have a manifesto in terms of what kind of leader she was going to be. We then go into Tory party conference. We get all these different versions. We get Theresa May with her version, which is playing to the right-wingers. We've got Liam Fox. Lord knows what his version of what Brexit is going to be. We've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer and his department clearly totally with jitters about it. Them all saying different things. We have the Japanese companies who invest a great deal in our country and are major investors. With the Japanese government, the Japanese are so polite. And yet they wrote a letter, they've made it public, and they asked a series of questions, quite right too. You know, what are you going to do? What's your continuing trade relationship with Europe going to be? What is going to be the migration policy? What are you going to do with regional funding? You know, there are so many questions.
There are 170 questions.
170.
I've got them too.
We wrote
That's a
170
surprise.
questions for the government.
Do you really
one
expect them
question
to
a
answer
day.
all these?
Yes, of course, because do you know what? If they don't answer our questions now, right, I can tell you one thing. The 27 partners that we have in Europe, they'll be asking all these questions when they arrive in Brussels on the 31st of March, and they will want to know what our position is. And when the Tories say, oh, we've got to keep our cards close to our chest, excuse me, what cards? You can't even agree amongst yourselves what game you're playing,
all right.
let alone what cards. And it is not right, and it's not democratic for them to think that they can go into a locked room, have a bust-up amongst themselves, and then decide what is best for me, my children, and my grandchildren.
Isabel.
This 170 questions put by Labour is an absolute absurdity. I had the displeasure of hearing Emily Thornberry on the radio yesterday, unable to answer even one question about her party's immigration policy. To get back to the issue about hard or soft Brexit, I would like to get rid of this term, hard Brexit. It is designed to intimidate. It is a continuation of Project Fear. Let's think about what soft Brexit is. Soft Brexit is sellout Brexit, synthetic Brexit. Hard Brexit is real Brexit. It's what people voted for, which is control over our borders.
All right. Remember the question. The question was, does the British public have they given Theresa May a blank cheque?
The short answer is no. I should just point out, they now call me editor-at-large rather than editor of The Independent, which is a crucial distinction if you work at The Independent. I'm just going to come back to this...
I think we haven't got enough time to go into that.
Let's not go there. But, so I agree with Isabel that the idea of hard and soft Brexit is complete and utter nonsense, right? It's a real dangerous type of language, because what we're actually talking about is a single market. And on the single market, the question is Britain going to remain part of the single market? And the point is, we don't know. Because when Article 50 is triggered, you enter a 2-year negotiation. And in that negotiation, for over 2 years, I can't see why 27 countries, each of which has a veto, I can't see why any of them have any incentive to let us remain part of the single market. They would all think Britain's got to pay a price for coming out. On top of that, we know, because Theresa May said it in her conference speech, that Britain's relationship isn't going to be anything like what it was, which I take to mean that we're going to be leaving the single market. And then the main thing is, it's really about respecting the will of the people, which is to say, if people want control of migration, you have to leave the single market. That's the kind of fact. And that is, as far as I can see, that is the trade-off that was made on June the 23rd. It was a trade-off where you say, Britain might become a little bit poorer, but we get control of immigration.
But hang on, how do you know that? Because Damian said that it was about wanting more control, simply.
Well,
how do you know what
we
people
don't
vote
know.
for?
We don't know. I interpret
You
from
don't know,
general
exactly.
polls. I interpret from polls that have been recorded for years that people want low migration. But if I could just add briefly to the 170 questions, I have 2 questions which I think a lot of people here would want answered, which I genuinely don't know the answer to, despite being someone who follows politics closely. The first is, if there was a vote in Parliament, it wouldn't be binding, because it's not legislation, is it, Damian? So I can't see why the government wouldn't just ignore it. So I genuinely, as a practical, technocratic matter, I don't know why that matters. And the other thing is, if you're starting a negotiation which lasts for 2 years, how can you ask a government to lay out all of its negotiating position and the things on which it's flexible? You can't do that, because...
So can you ask no questions at all of the Prime Minister?
I'm just saying, I don't understand how it would work to say to the government, come forward and say what you're asking for.
And then I'm going to come to the members.
Because that immediately allows the opposition to run down the clock.
So when David Cameron went off to Europe before the referendum and fixed the problems of Europe, he went entirely as a representative of the Tory party that was going into a general election. And quite frankly, the people in Europe saw him coming and thought he's not speaking on behalf of the whole of Britain, he's just speaking on behalf of the Tories. And at that point, unfortunately, we were wrong. We thought that they weren't going to win the election, and they did. So in order for them to actually strengthen their hand, what they should be doing is they should be coming to the British Parliament, we should be able to have a debate, we ought to have an exchange of ideas, and we ought to be able to come to at least some form... all right, I'll come to that.
No, don't come to that. Don't go on too long.
5.5 hours we were sitting in Parliament. Alex. Did we get anything from the Tories at all in terms of what their plans were? Absolutely not.
OK,
Absolutely
Emily,
not.
I'm going to stop you now. Emily, I'm going to stop you because everybody else got to have a say.
Well,
Alex?
Damian says there's going to be lots of discussion, but what he didn't say whether it's going to be a vote on it. I mean, you can talk endlessly and find out nothing, but is there going to be a vote? Now, the reason that there has to be a vote, at some stage to withdraw from the European Union, there has to be a parliamentary act passed. It will have to pass a vote. Now, they should have a vote now, because if they can't get a majority for the negotiating terms, then how on earth would they get a majority after they've finished the negotiations? That's why they should bring the terms to Parliament now, have a vote, and let's see if they've got a majority.
All right, you said that, Green. Okay. Yes.
The assumption that we are trading our membership of the single market for ability to control our borders and regaining our sovereignty is a strange one, because I think there's a strong positive case for leaving the single market, in that we are leaving a world of regulation and entering a world of markets which seem to be creating trade deals with far greater success.
All right. Man up there at the back.
Thank you.
Yep.
Damian, you see your party had a clear plan on negotiating a Brexit, but Theresa May this week, she said that she wants maximum control of the borders and maximum possible access to the single market. But you can't have both, so I need to know, like, how is that a plan?
It's not an unreasonable position to want it.
It's a perfectly sensible opening position that we accept.
So it's not a secret.
That's what the
position.
Well, I did say that in my first answer, and also the point about. I mean, the one point. Let's agree for once. You said, Alex, that there will have to be a vote on an act. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what the Prime Minister promised this week. Right. There will be a repeal act in the next...
Talk about a dead cat strategy. That's got nothing to do with it.
What do you mean? It's a repeal act of the European Union. Emily, let me finish.
It's not about
Emily, it is. It's about repealing the existing legislation. That's precisely what the legislation is, and Parliament will debate that and vote on it.
But is that the same thing? Downing Street said that there'd be a vote on a final deal. Is that what you're talking about? Is that something different?
That's another vote.
This is a vote.
That's another vote.
This is a vote before we go, which actually pulls us out of the European Union.
Let's hear from more members of Orange. The woman there on the left didn't do it. I'll come to you. Yes.
Me?
You, yes?
Yeah. So Damian Green opened by saying people clearly want more control, but how do they know what people want? Because the question on the ballot paper was, do you want to remain or leave the European Union? They seem to be...
And the one thing
They seem to be hijacking the voice of the Leave voters for their own ends.
Did you, when you voted, I won't ask how you voted, did you know what you were voting for?
Yes.
Well, perhaps I will ask how you voted.
I voted to remain.
Yes.
Well,
okay.
are you suggesting that...
No, yeah, go on.
Are you suggesting that the vast majority of people who voted to leave, 17.4 million people, didn't know what they were voting for or why?
No, I'm suggesting
because
they all...
most... Oh, that is fascinating that you think that so many people, ordinary voters, are so stupid.
No. What they think is ordinary voters were lied to by the No campaign. That's what they think.
And you don't think they were lied to by the Yes campaign?
All right, let's go on. Yes, come back.
People voted for many different reasons, and I know many Leave voters who did not vote to curb immigration. They voted for more sovereignty. So a hard Brexit solution does not serve their vote.
Well, you'll get sovereignty.
Okay.
You'll get
the woman there, in the third row from the back. Yes, you.
Me.
Yes.
I just want to say I totally agree with Emily Thornberry. I'd like to also make the point that are we going to allow a woman exercise an executive power because she's a prime minister who doesn't have a democratic mandate of her own and who's refusing to call the general election for all of us to test the credibility of her premiership?
All right, and you in the second row.
I feel we almost need to get back to the point. We're actually talking about the cards on the table. And anyone that negotiates don't put their cards on the table publicly or even in Parliament, I would say. I'd say everyone needs to come up with a plan and an idea, put that forwards, and maybe then a general election or some sort of vote, not a referendum, could be then given.
OK. And any Leave voters who feel... yes, you, sir. What do you feel about the way that it's being handled now? The man in the white and grey.
I think it's been handled in the correct way. I mean, I don't think...
In the correct way?
Yeah, I think it's been handled in the correct way.
Do you know what you voted for?
Yeah, absolutely. And what annoys me is when Mr Salmon and Mrs Thornberry tell us, it's almost like Project Fear over again. We don't understand what we're voting for.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm not stupid. Stop belittling us. You know what we voted for.
What did you vote for?
I voted Leave. I voted
but what did you vote for?
To take sovereignty back of our laws, to get rid of the single markets regulation. And to take back control of immigration. Now, I know that hasn't been put in black and white, and we don't have a definitive plan, but there were three key aspects what we voted for. So stop telling us what we didn't know what we voted for, because we did.
Alex, you want to
Only that some people, perhaps not yourself, believed that the National Health Service was going to get an extra £350 million a week. And we've seen a sign of it.
All right, anybody else who voted Brexit? Yes, you, sir.
There were three holy grails of what Leave means. Taking back control of immigration, our laws and our money. None of that can be achieved in the single market.
Right.
David Cameron, George Osborne, everyone, there's a consensus. Leave means leaving the single market, means remaining in. I don't know why the Ramonas keep trying to obstruct Brexit by lying and saying, oh, we need to stay in through the back door. It's ridiculous.
Do you think it's as simple as that? You heard what he said, do you agree with that?
I mean, I didn't vote Leave, so it's quite difficult for me to interpret what Leave voters wanted. But
you're in the government, you're going to have to interpret it.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing. And I think, broadly speaking, that's the message we get from the Leave vote. And broadly speaking, as I've said a couple of times, that's what we're looking to. And the question of trying to achieve the maximum control of immigration and also the maximum advantage for British companies trading in Europe. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And it will be a negotiation, so we can't lay out the details now. But it does seem not unreasonable as an opening position to say we will do both what the British people have wanted and also what is to the maximum economic advantage for the future prosperity of this country.
All right,
Any sensible government would do that.
Emily, you said we have to negotiate, but we then need to consult the public again on whether or not the deal is a reflection of what they thought they were voting for. If you talk to that gentleman there who voted out, there's no need to consult him again, or the person up there who voted out, no need to consult them, and it was 70 over what it was, 17 million who voted out. You're saying you don't believe they knew what they were voting for?
Well, let me ask it this way. I mean, how many people here voted to take their next-door neighbour's job away? Because the truth is...
ludicrous.
No.
That is
ludicrous. Because the truth is...
That is ludicrous.
The truth is that the government... The government ought to have, first of all, it's its primary responsibility the safety of its people, and its secondary responsibility to make sure that we have a decent economy so that people keep their jobs. People who've only just got their heads above water. If this economy goes south, then people who are just making ends meet will be the ones who will suffer most. It won't be Liam Fox's family who will suffer. It will be ordinary families who will be suffering. And Victoria are taking risks with our economy.
All right, so you issued the challenge. How many of you voted to take your neighbours' jobs away? Hands up. No hands up.
I mean, that is a ludicrous...
All right,
And I tell you
yeah,
what, Emily, the job of the opposition is not to talk total nonsense.
Yeah? Yeah.
Are you still there? The man in the blue jacket. Yes.
Would Emily Thornberry please, would you provide the terms that Labour would agree to, and would you provide the answers to the 170 questions that you'd like to receive?
I think that if we were able...
I haven't got time for the 170 answer.
I would be quite happy to be the Foreign Secretary, and for us to be in government, and for us to have the Whitehall at our disposal and have had the time that the Tories have had, but we do not. But we are the opposition. It is our duty, it is our obligation at a time like this, at a time of grave constitutional and economic and political crisis, for us to be asking questions and for the government to be doing its utmost to answer them. Because uncertainty has to end, for the sake of all of us. And it isn't just us that's asking, it's the CBI, it's the Japanese, it's the chair of the Treasury Select Committee.
You've said that, yes.
Well,
Can I put things a different way from Emily? I spent 2 referendums, the Scottish one and the European one, deprecating Project Fear. During the referendum campaign, I was arguing for Remain, but on this programme, I attacked George Osborne for the way he was presenting the Remain argument, because I didn't feel that people were going to be bullied, intimidated out of their vote, nor should they have been. But the fact is, if it is a hard Brexit, if we go out with the single marketplace with no provisions in place for our trade, then we will lose jobs.
Yep.
The Prime Minister is the First Lord of the Treasury.
Yeah.
The Treasury forecast says that. Now, either she should sack these civil servants who are making the forecasts and get other ones, or perhaps she should sack the Chancellor, maybe both. But whatever, she can't have her cake and eat it in that sense. And one last thing, the Scottish Parliament had a forecast produced that out with the single market, there would be 80,000 jobs lost in Scotland. Now, that's from people who are not in the Treasury, who weren't part of George Osborne. Now, that can be changed if there are other arrangements made. But unless we know what these arrangements are, then we face the hard Brexit possibility and the job losses.
Okay.
That is the argument.
OK,
Yeah.
the man there in the check shirt, I just hear more members of our audience, and I'll come back to the panel. Yes, it's interesting.
In the referendum, we were offered a binary choice to leave the European Union or remain. We were not offered the opportunity to vote on whether we should stay in the single market and leave, like Norway. We don't know what British people think about that. As a result, well, clearly, to do so would respect the referendum, because we weren't offered that choice. It would maintain many of the best things about the European Union and deal with many people's concerns. It's clearly the best possible compromise of avoiding the economic and social catastrophe of a hard Brexit. And I think it's extraordinary the government is ruling that out of the question.
OK. And you, sir, in the front here. Yes.
Moving on from sort of the nitty-gritty of the details, either a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit, the result that was quite close has showed that Britain is very divided in terms of opinion on either side. And also, I think that in the Daily Mail and the Daily Express this week, the headlines and the kind of Daily Mail or Daily Express comment damning Ramona's, as you put it, I think that's... I mean, I disagree with that, by the way, but I think the very fact that you've kind of put that in such vitriolic language to 48% of the British population really does not help
Well, hang on a
reverse
minute.
the divisions in British
All right,
society.
Isabel, let me ask you a question. If you were Prime Minister and you're faced, as he says, with 48% saying Remain, what account of them would you take if you were Theresa May? None?
Well, I think that is obviously a very legitimate question, but I need to come
What's
back
the legitimate
to you.
answer?
The legitimate answer is that in this country, we have a parliamentary democracy that goes by a kind of first-past-the-post system. So in the referendum, the majority of people voted out. That has to be respected. To come back to you on your issue with the Daily Mail editorial, when we talked about Ramonas, it's not talking about ordinary people that voted to remain. It's talking about the politicians, the people like Anna Soubry, Nicky Morgan, the politicians, by the way, the majority of whose own constituents voted for out. Ed Miliband, the same, the majority of his constituents voted for out, and are yet telling us that this is doom, it's all going to be Armageddon, and are not respecting the will of the people, and are persistently trying to argue for another referendum because they didn't like the answer.
Damian Green, what do you make of those of your colleagues who are named by the Daily Mail as bemoaners?
Well, I think democratic politicians have the right and indeed the duty to say what they think, and I don't think newspapers should complain about that. But I think the point about it was 52-48 is a really good one. And the answer to what's the job of the government is precisely to bring the country together by producing the best deal possible. And Emily was right. Let me rescue Emily. That she was right to talk about the. I
don't think she needs rescuing. It's all right.
The economic issue, because of course that's very, very important. We have got a tremendously strong economy. We've been the fastest growing big economy for years. We've got more jobs than we've had for 10 years. We've got more women in work than ever before. And preserving that by keeping Britain as a prosperous, outward-looking, global trading nation, both with Europe and the rest of the world, is absolutely at the heart of what the government is trying to do, and that will preserve our prosperity for the future.
Very briefly.
If I may, just very briefly, the second woman that spoke, the second lady that spoke, was a small business owner. I can't find where you are. Yeah, I've got to just tell you, there's two things that everyone here needs to understand. The first is, we've got 2 and a bit years of this. This is going to go on for a long time. You're shaking your head because you're a small business owner and what you want is certainty. Yeah. We are not going to have anything like certainty for a very, very long time. It's the nature of negotiations with 27 other countries who each have a veto, that even if you think you have certainty, on the final minute someone can pull a rabbit out of the hat. So get used to it, basically. OK. Well, that's been very fascinating. I'm sorry. I think we'd better move on because we're halfway through the programme on that one topic. I'm sorry to you. Do you want very briefly to speak? Yes, because you've had your hand up a long time, and I don't want you to suffer from shoulder ache.
Yeah. I take issue with people saying that people that voted out are stupid, because we're not stupid. I've done some informed research, and I base my vote on that, so I'm just saying I'm not
what did you vote for when you voted?
I voted to leave, which I wanted
for what, though?
To leave the single market, because I think there's a bigger world out there that we can trade with. I think there's so much more opportunities than in Europe, and there's no growth in Europe.
And did you vote to take your neighbour's job away?
Come on, it's a ridiculous
No, I voted to take Emily's job away.
Right. On which note, a reminder of where we're going to be next week. You see what it's like on Question Time. Come to Hartlepool or come to Gloucester the week after that and engage on these topics. The details are there on the screen of how to apply, but I'll give them at the end as well in full. Let's go on to another question. This from Daniel Chambers, please. Daniel Chambers.
Have the latest Donald Trump revelations made him unfit to be president?
Have the latest Donald Trump revelations made him unfit to be president? Amol Rajan.
I don't think we needed the latest Donald Trump revelations to know that he was unfit to be president. The man is a psychopath. He has something that is called narcissistic alexithymia, which is basically narcissistic personality syndrome. He can't relate to people. And actually, if you watch him sort of wandering around that debate, it's an amazingly weird psychological experience. But actually, I almost began to feel pity for the man. Donald Trump is an extreme loner. He doesn't actually have any friends. He's lived a very sad and lonely life. And he's got a quite ludicrous bunch of policies, which means that he probably won't get elected. For those of you who want to know if he does get elected, I should just give you a warning. First of all, there's still a bit of time before he gets elected. Anything could happen. I imagine Vladimir Putin is planning an October surprise. He'd quite like Trump to get in, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's planning to hijack the election in some way. And the other thing is, I think that there's a huge phenomenon which we neglect in America, just as we neglected the shy Tory phenomenon here, of a lot of people who say that they don't know are actually going to vote for Trump. And I think the big two questions are, first of all, if Trump is such a psychopath and a lying, racist, sexist bully, why isn't Hillary way ahead? And I'm not saying that because I think she's a terrible candidate. I think it speaks to the fact that America is a very, very divided country. And the other thing is that if Trump if Trump loses, you've still got a massive problem. You've got 50 or 60 million people who expressed a vote for him and feel that they've been completely neglected. But the way to understand Trump, basically, just to briefly finish, is he's like King Lear upon the heath. You know, King Lear, if you remember Act 2, Scene 4, Lear on the heath is going completely mad. He says, I shall do such things, what they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. That is basically what Trump is, you know, like the Dylan Thomas hero. He's raging against the dying of the light.
Isabel Oakeshott.
Well, I found his comments on women absolutely repellent, and I think they probably do disqualify him for the presidency. But what worries me, and it touches on what Amal was saying, is that, you know, why has he got as far as he has? And the reason is that people who back Trump in America are not looking for a messiah. They're not looking to vote for the Pope here. They're looking for a battering ram. They are looking for something that crashes the establishment. And it is a kind of, the way I see it, a kind of howl of protest against the sanitisation of political debate. People like the fact that he is prepared to go into debates that others wouldn't have. So on immigration, he's prepared to just throw it all out there and be dangerous and provocative. It's deeply worrying, but you've got to look at what got him there in the first place.
Emily Thornberry.
Well, as a British politician, we have to be very careful about telling Americans how to vote.
No, you don't.
But what we could do, perhaps, is rely, quote Her Majesty, when she said before the Scottish referendum, we would hope that they would think very carefully about it. So let me just answer it, instead of answering as a British politician, let me answer it as a woman. And as a woman, I thought his comments were completely disgusting and totally offensive, and of course he shouldn't be American president.
All right, the woman there in the second row.
I'd like to know how you think our relationship with the States will change if he does become president.
I think it's very difficult to know exactly what he's going to do in terms of his policies, because I think that he's somebody who's basically thrived on just getting as much attention as he can by saying outrageous things. But I think that the difficulty that we have in relation to his attitude to women is that is deeply ingrained. And the idea that somebody could be president of America and have the attitude that he does to half the population is completely inappropriate.
Alex Salmond, do you share the view that you've heard around this table about why he got the Republican nomination, why he's not sort of already left the scene?
Yeah, I mean, he's riding an anti-establishment wave, but I mean, thus far he's already been compared to King Lear and Her Majesty the Queen. I can tell you,
Dylan Thomas's father as well.
I mean, I can tell you, it's none of the best description I've heard of Trump or read about Trump was an article on the FT last week, which said that only drunks and sociopaths tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning, and Trump is a teetotaler. So that's basically what he is. And I mean, all this stuff about the Muslims and Mexicans, I mean, that was for the campaign. That was to get the Republican nomination. He's a sociopath. He's a demagogue. The straight answer to the question, did we need the latest appalling descriptions demeaning a woman to tell us he's not fit to be president? No, we didn't. He's not fit to be president for all of these reasons.
Of course, he thinks you're a has-been and totally irrelevant.
Well,
which is what he said about you.
Well, that's it. You should judge people by their enemies, and I am proud to call Donald Trump one of my enemies.
Yes, the woman there.
Well, seeing as Trump is such, like, a ridiculous psychopath, why are we letting someone from Britain who has appeared on a number of, like, official stages and has affected a lot of people, Nigel Farage, who has led, hasn't led, but has been a very prominent figure in a campaign to leave the EU, why are we letting him appear and on a stage with Donald Trump and coach Donald Trump? Yeah. Why is there, like, no...
Since Nigel Farage did that, Trump has been sinking like a stone. So Farage might be our secret weapon.
What? Yeah, chap at the front looks like he's...
Moses?
No, the back with the guy with the jacket and glasses.
What? He's starting to chair the programme. He says you're in favour of Trump. Are you in favour of Trump?
I'm fed up of politicians attacking Donald Trump, calling him sexist. Hillary Clinton's the one who defended rapists, who leaked emails, and you calling Trump unfit is quite frankly ridiculous.
All right, Damian Green.
He is going to make... I like him, he's nice. He will make America great again. He's the change candidate. He wants to get rid of Obamacare, and he wants to actually try and improve things for African Americans in the inner city areas. Hillary Clinton's done nothing. As Secretary of State, she's an appalling woman, and quite frankly, she is not fit.
Okay, you're at the back there. You say yes. Go on.
Mike here, yep. At least Hillary Clinton has held office. She was quite an effective Secretary of State.
Right.
What has Trump done? He's got no political experience at all.
Damian Green.
All the other faults he's got.
Damian Green, is he unfit to be president?
I think it's a seriously bad idea for government ministers in another country to try and advise democratic-friendly countries which way to vote.
Just asking you whether you think he's unfit. You're not advising the American electorate.
Well,
you need to be pompous about it.
No, I'm not being pompous about it. I'm not being unnecessarily pompous. I'm just being, being careful. I'm just being careful. But I will comment on the words, partly because both, I think, Isabel and Emily said, as a woman, she found those words he said offensive. Can I say that as a man, I found them really offensive as well? And
okay. Thank you. We'll go on to another question. Gabrielle Bagel, please.
When playing games with my nieces and nephews, we sometimes need to make it the best of three if they're losing. How many Scottish referendums are we going to need?
I'll come to you in a moment. Damian Green.
Well, I think we've had a referendum in Scotland, and the Scottish people very sensibly decided that they were better off inside the United Kingdom. I think that's good for everyone else in the UK, and certainly good for Scotland. All the leaders of the SNP at the time, including Alex, said that this was a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime vote. They now seem to be changing their mind on that. I have great faith in the common sense of the Scottish people. They rejected separation when oil was $100 a barrel. They've got twice as much reason to do it now that oil is $50 a barrel. And frankly, you have to ask yourself, why is the SNP doing this now? This is a piece of bluster to distract from the fact that they're doing their day job running the Scottish government very badly. School standards are falling in Scotland. There are fewer deprived children go to university in Scotland and do in England and Wales. People are waiting longer for help from the police because of the Scottish government. What they're trying to do is distract the Scottish people from the recognition that actually, as a government, they're very, very poor.
Right. What Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, said today was she's determined Scotland will have the ability to reconsider the question of independence. If she comes out saying we want another referendum, would the Westminster government, the British government, agree to it?
Well, we haven't got anywhere near. That's a process point. I'm saying they shouldn't, and I think the Scottish people won't want that.
So you don't think there should be another referendum?
I don't think there should be another referendum.
Alex Salmond, should there be one if Scotland wants it?
I was looking at Damian reading from his central office brief about what he thinks about Scottish education and the Scottish Health Service. Damian, Nicola Sturgeon was re-elected First Minister of Scotland in May of this year with 47% of the vote. Now, that is a mandate that the Conservative Party can only dream about. You've got a leader who has not been elected, and your previous leader got 37% of the vote. And in that manifesto that she was elected on in May of this year contained the words that if there is a significant and material change in circumstances, like Scotland being dragged out of the European Union against the wishes of the Scottish people, then the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum. And on that manifesto, she was re-elected First Minister with 47% of the vote. Now, that is an unimpeachable mandate to say what Nicola Sturgeon said today.
And will there be a referendum, in your view?
I think what will happen is as follows. I think Nicola will put forward to the Prime Minister, Theresa May, representing the interests of Scotland, a plan whereby Scotland can retain its European connections in trade, a plan to defend European citizens in Scotland so as they're not treated as bargaining chips or cards to be played. Their rights are respected. And a plan to defend the social and employment rights of Scottish workers. Now, that's the plan that will go forward, Theresa May. The ball will be in her court to accommodate that within her Brexit negotiations. If she says yes to that, then I think that will be Nicola discharging her mandate. If she says no to it, then I think there will be another referendum within 2 years.
Which she'll lose again.
Well, I don't think Nicola will be holding it. Well, David,
repeat the sentence. She wouldn't be holding it unless
she wouldn't be holding it unless she thought she was going to win it. I think that's absolutely right.
Did you hold it believing you were going to win it?
Yeah, and I started the referendum campaign in 2012 at 27% of the vote, and we ended up at 45%. Now, I don't think Nicola Sturgeon is going to have too many compunctions about starting in 48% of the vote, which is where the latest poll shows it. You know, you win referendums in terms of the arguments you put forward and the movement of people. And if you put forward a case which appeals to people's hopes for the future, that tries to address the questions, then you can win a referendum.
The woman in the front.
The argument that Damian puts forward, that she has no mandate for it, is absolutely and utterly ridiculous and ignores the results of Scottish
elections. If we go with your thinking, technically, if you think about the EU referendum,
absolutely
48% of the people decided to stay. So in 2 or 3 years' time, if we don't get the deals and conditions that we want, there should be another referendum as to whether we should rejoin the EU.
I think there should be a referendum when a parliament votes for a referendum, when it decides to put it to the people. And if the Scottish Parliament, and it would have to be the SNP and the Green Party, combined to have the majority in a PR Parliament,
then no is no.
Well, then they can put the matter to the people in a referendum. If a Parliament votes for it, then the people have the right to decide.
I think we've got the point. I think we've got the point.
Alec, I'm amazed that you're going on and boasting about this 47%, which is apparently great for you, but when it's 52% for out, that's not good enough.
Sorry, no.
And by the way...
Alex, let her speak. Let her speak.
I'm also amazed that Alec wants another referendum because the economic case for Scottish independence has been absolutely shredded. Scotland is more of an economic basket case than Greece at the moment. How will you pay your welfare bill without us?
This is a lady who was complaining about Project Fear. And in the remainder
Project
of the referendum.
Reality is what we've got here that you need to listen to.
All right, Alex.
Take it this way. If Scotland wasn't a viable and extremely prosperous country with amazing natural and human resources, the United Kingdom Treasury and the Conservative Party wouldn't be so anxious to hang on to us, I can tell you that.
Amal, you'll go.
Gabrielle, you asked, if I remember it correctly, how many referendums do we need? And I think the answer is as many as Alex Salmond and the SNP say they want. Because it seems to me that losing that referendum was the best thing that ever happened to the SNP. They may well have preferred to have won and had an independent Scotland, but they now have a foothold in Westminster, and they now have they're so deeply entrenched in Scotland, in government, and Labour has completely collapsed in Scotland, that basically another referendum is inevitable. I was very surprised that Nicola Sturgeon announced that there was going to be a referendum today, because I thought that, the polls suggested that there hadn't been some great uptick in support for independence. I think it's about 38%, and I thought that actually it would take a bit more time. But actually, do you know what, Alex? I think eventually you'll win, and I think your lifelong dream of an independent Scotland and a broken United Kingdom will be fulfilled, because the forces pulling Scotland away, social, political, demographic, from the rest of the country, from the rest of England, are now so strong, and they cannot be tolerated. So whether Alex Salmond gets his referendum in a couple of years or not, it might be in 10 years, but I think eventually Scotland is leaving, and we better get used to it.
You, sir.
Scotland has the largest fiscal deficit in the Western world, no plan for the currency, and no guarantee of being able to re-enter the EU. You need to get a deficit down to 3% of GDP. You can ask the same question, you'll get the same answer.
OK, let me just hear from one or two more members of what you said in the front, the second row.
The prospect of the country being broken up with Scottish potential independence, does the panel think that referendums should be put to the English, the Welsh and the Northern Irish as to whether they want the United Kingdom to disintegrate? Serious implications if Scotland leaves the Union.
Emily Thornberry.
I want us to be United Kingdom. I think that we are a great country when we are united. I don't want us to splinter off. I think we are who we are because we stick together. And I would do everything I can to keep our country together.
All right, I'm going to move on because we only have 10 minutes left. Rebecca Rees, your question, please.
Is the current parliamentary Labour Party an effective opposition to the government?
Is the current parliamentary Labour Party an effective opposition? Mo?
No is a short answer, but I have to say, in the last week, it's changed. I have to say, I've got respect for Emily in that she's, in what she's done with these 170 questions. In the first time under Jeremy Corbyn, it's looked to me like Labour's doing what it's meant to do. Labour's got so many problems, it's ridiculous. I think your question may be motivated by a poll this week which said that Labour is 17 points behind the Tories. That's the beginning of the problems. In England, where most marginal seats are, Labour's 25% behind. Among over 65s, so the most likely people to vote, it's 48% behind. No one to the left of Tony Blair has won an election in Britain since 1976, right? And if at the last election the problem was a left-wing leader who wasn't trusted in the economy, having a more left-wing leader who's less trusted in the economy isn't necessarily going to get Labour elected. But I'll tell you there's a deeper philosophical problem, which isn't the practical one which Emily's trying to solve, is that I believe that despite being in Parliament since 1983, and despite the fact that Emily's been in Parliament for 11 years, this Labour movement and momentum don't actually believe in Parliament. Several years ago, in 2012, John McDonnell was asked how you achieve social change. And he said there's three ways. Insurrection, so on the streets, there's trade unions, and there's Parliament. And he said don't expect change from Parliament to come anytime soon. And if you think about it, the thing about Labour, the thing that's really interesting, is they flirted with David Miliband, they lost under Ed Miliband, and they're now governed by Ralph Miliband. Because Ralph Miliband, who you guys may know, wrote a book in 1969 called Parliamentary Socialism. It's actually quite a good book. I read it so you don't have to. And the whole point about it is that it says parliamentary socialism is an oxymoron. If you want to achieve socialism, you do it through the streets. And I don't think... Part of the reason that Jeremy Corbyn is pretty relaxed about the fact that 182 of his MPs say he's got no confidence in them is because he doesn't really care about achieving power, and that's the main driving reason that Labour is a completely useless opposition right now.
Of course, Rebecca Rees's question wasn't, can they become a government? The question was, are they an effective opposition, which is a slightly different question.
Until this week. I think Emily's actually provided some opposition this week. She's been on the Today programme, Newsnight on Channel 4.
All right, well,
but until this week,
I'll come to Emily in a moment. Alex Salmond.
No, I mean, Labour haven't been an effective opposition, and that's self-evident from the last year. But I rather agree. I mean, I think the European issue is going to put enormous pressure on the government. We'll find out if Theresa May leads an effective government. I'm not so sure about the idea that Jeremy Corbyn is so left-wing that people wouldn't respond to it. I mean, I don't think it's Jeremy's politics that have been the problem. It's been the competence. It's been the lack of ability to lead in Parliament and out with it. And if that can be changed, I'm not certain that Labour couldn't provide a much, much better show than they're having. But, you know, in terms of imbalance in politics, the SNP won 56 out of 59 of the Westminster seats in Scotland. The Tories party won 1 and Labour won 1. Now, when I started out in politics, I didn't think I'd ever see a situation when the Labour Party were reduced to 1 seat in Scotland. But you should perhaps think about this, Damian, that the UKIP have 1 seat in the UK. And we're in a situation in Scotland where the party with 1 seat, the Tory party, actually is running the country in major decisions. So people should just think about how they would feel if UKIP were currently in government with 1 seat, and then you'll understand where Scotland is going.
You in the front there.
Well, we've all unanimously agreed that the Labour Party is riddled with divisions. Does the panel think that there is a possibility of a split?
Of a split in the Labour Party?
Yes.
There ought to be a split in the Labour Party.
Emily Thornbury.
The Labour Party is a coalition on the left, just like the Tory Party are a coalition on the right. And whilst the Tories have huge divisions, we have huge divisions as well.
The next time you hear a Labour politician say that the Labour Party is a broad church,
can I get a word in
just tell him to stop talking. It's nonsense. You've got nothing in common with them.
Let her answer.
So we have divisions and the Tories have divisions, and unlike the Tories who fight their battles in closed rooms, we fight in the press. You can see we fight in the press.
Are we supposed to be impressed by that?
And it's not impressive, and it has to stop. Because actually, you know, what unites us is so much more than what divides us.
Oh, please.
What unites us is so much more.
Untrue.
We are a divided country. It is important that we hold this government to account. It is outrageous the way in which they have not had regional economic policies. It is outrageous the way they have not been investing in some of the poorer communities up and down this country, and they have essentially turned their back on them. We are a divided country in terms of, those who are doing badly out of this government are doing much worse. We look today at the results in the health service and what is happening in the health service and the way in which, on all the stats, the health service is in a much worse place.
What's this got to do with you being an effective opposition?
And we have to, as one of the things, so one of the things that one has to do as an opposition is point these things out, despite the barracking from the Daily Mail or anywhere else. And we have to be true to what it is that we stand up for, and we have to make clear that there is an alternative, because there is an alternative, and Labour can be an alternative. And what, as I say, we have some differences. Of course we have differences, but I tell you what, it is nothing compared to the differences you are about to see when it comes to Brexit and the Tory party. There are arguments that we have, but what we have to do at this stage is pull together and remember what it is that we have in common, and we can be and we must be an effective opposition to this appalling government.
But hang on a second, you're the man in charge of Brexit, your Brexit shadow secretary, himself said you can't offer an effective opposition without a change of leader. So how can you? You're not going to change the leader. How can you offer an effective opposition?
Can I just say this? I mean, Jeremy has the advantage of being a good and decent man. And he is a good and decent man. And what we need to do is, the Labour Party is a collective endeavour. It is not one person. We are, in fact, the largest political party in Western Europe. We are now nearly 600,000 strong. We are a very large and a democratic party, and we need to make sure that the Parliamentary Labour Party steps up, pulls together and actually puts forward the arguments, because there are a huge number of arguments and there is an alternative, and we need to get on with our job.
Let's hear from one of the people about whether they think Labour's an effective opposition. The woman in spectacles there in the second row from the back. You, madam.
Jeremy Corbyn talks about loyalty, and I'm sorry, but over the 30 years of his career, he's shown complete disloyalty to Labour, because he's voted against the whip for is it 500 times? So where is this professionalism and this loyalty that we're meant to show to Corbyn?
OK, and the woman there with spectacles, yes. You, madam, yep.
I want all the parties to care more about what's going to be happening in Europe and our relationship with Europe, whatever the relationship is, rather than this infighting between parties, because so many more important issues are at stake. They need to spend their time and energy sorting that problem out than fighting and other referendums.
Rebecca Rees, what do you... Rebecca Rees, what do you think? You asked the question.
Well, as a member of the Labour Party, I feel quite let down by the Parliamentary Labour Party, and I think large parts of the public should as well, because I think the resignations by the shadow cabinet after Brexit, they really allowed the Conservative Party to hide their own internal divisions. And as you said, they've got their own huge divisions over Brexit, but all that's being shown are Labour's divisions.
Damian Green.
I was in opposition when the Tory party was in a bad place in the early years of this century, and nothing is like the despair on the Labour benches now. Trust me, I was there. Labour's in a much worse place. I just want to pick up one point, which is part of the sort of Labour hymn sheet that the Tories are much more divided than we are. It is demonstrably not true. Right. People on either side of the European referendum a few months ago are now sitting in Cabinet. I'm in Cabinet with Liam Fox and David Davis, and we are arguing a future about how we can get the best from the Brexit vote. And we will agree. But the point is, we are sitting in Cabinet together. Your shadow Cabinet won't have in it, because they won't serve in it, Hilary Benn, Chuka Umunna, Yvette Cooper, a lot of talented
politicians. You've got people who've been kicked out of your Cabinet.
We've got nobody who was asked to serve who refused to serve. We have got the broad church of the Conservative Party represented around
finish
the
it?
cabinet.
And the cabinet?
Emily,
14
apart from you,
ministers.
most of the talented Labour politicians
Let's give
in
you the
Britain
memory you've
are
got,
refusing to serve
Do you not remember
in
that
Jeremy
press
Corbyn.
conference where Boris Johnson was there ready to launch his bid and Michael Gove popped up and said, I'm not backing him anymore, he's unfit
Yeah,
to be
and
leader.
Boris
Was
Boris
that a
is now in
sign of a
cabinet and
totally
I'm in
united
the cabinet.
party?
Michael Gove isn't in the cabinet.
We have a united cabinet that represents all shades of view on the Brexit issue. Most of the talented Labour politicians won't even serve under Jeremy Corbyn. And unless and until you get your talented people on board, I'm afraid you will continue to be a pretty poor opposition.
You have the spectacles on, yes.
Given the influence that momentum appears to have within the Labour Party, has too much momentum now been generated so that it's now out of control?
Isabel Oakeshott.
Well, Emily goes on about Jeremy being a good and decent man. My question is he an honourable man? Is it honourable to remain leader of the opposition when you can't lead your own parliamentary party? This is actually a really simple question. If you can't lead your own parliamentary party, you cannot be an effective opposition. So the honourable thing would have been for him to quit a very long time ago.
Well, can you pick up on his point about momentum?
Just to repeat the question, given the influence that momentum appears to have within the Labour Party, is it now that too much momentum has been generated so that it's now out of control?
Absolutely, because momentum doesn't represent the views of the majority of Labour MPs, and the result is that those Labour MPs are totally out of sync with the party members and they cannot provide an effective opposition, and that is untenable.
But isn't it at least there's an argument that should be the other way around, that the Labour MPs should be more in tune with the Labour membership?
Well, that's an opportunity at the next election.
Sir, you're applauding. Are you a momentum supporter, sir? Yes. Yes, can you explain? Yes, your go.
Jeremy's just received his second landslide victory.
Yeah.
Coming back to what Isabel says, 172 MPs resigned. He's just been voted in by 300,000 people back to be leader of the party. That's a mandate. And coming back, coming back to what the lady said a minute ago about disloyalty and him voting against the whip. He voted against PFI, he voted against student tuition fees, he voted against the Iraq War. On every one of those, if you go back through history, most of them, the majority of them, if not all of them, he's been on the right side of history.
But sir, now, this is a really important thing.
You have to be brief.
And just quickly, sir, Emily, I'm sorry I interrupted you earlier. I shouldn't have done. The point is, it's just not true to say that what unites you is greater than what divides you. It's not true. A lot of the people who call themselves Labour moderates, who are in the Parliamentary Labour Party, came into politics because they want to save and reform capitalism. Jeremy Corbyn came into politics because he wants to replace and abolish it. Momentum is full of really decent and respectable people who have been miscast quite often in the media. It's decent, but it's just completely in a different place politically to the Parliamentary Labour Party. They're only forced together because the first past the post.
You've interrupted me.
I'm interrupting you, Emma,
because you're just talking nonsense here.
All right,
of
Emily,
course,
but you have to be
people
quick.
who stand for Parliament, who are a part of the parliamentary democracy, we believe in a form of capitalism which is ameliorated by having an economy which is a mixed economy. You know, we believe in the state. We believe in making sure that we have a strong country, but we look after the poor and the weak. And of course, we are a united country, and that is what pulls us together. That's the basic idea of the Labour Party.
I think, not a united country.
Well, we need a united country around a Labour Party which actually talks to the whole country.
And I have to stop you there because our thank you very much. Our hour's up, unfortunately.